Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy, and today we are talking about the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Now, this is a very fascinating book to me. I didn't know what quite to expect. I've heard it referenced in multiple talks on both sides of being good information, bad information. And I can have an interesting perspective here, so I don't mind if you throw stones at me. It's not... it's okay, but I'm going to share my honest thoughts about what I thought and how beneficial this book could be. One thing that I think is really important in the book, and I have to keep reminding myself that this was stated, is in the very beginning. I don't know if it's in the preface because I listened to it on Audible, so I don't know if it's in the preface or first chapter or whatnot, but he does kind of throw out a disclaimer that says, hey guys, I'm going to make some large generalities, and if you find yourself not necessarily agreeing with the generality, then one, think of maybe you're on the other side and your roles are reversed. So it's called role reversal. Roles are reversed in your relationship, or maybe you just are not being critically honest enough with yourself that you're recognizing that actually is how you like to be treated, right? And so there's got to be a healthy balance between recognizing that is how you actually like to be treated and gaslighting. And I'm not saying this, I'm going to use this term, but I'm not using it as negatively as it generally is used. But there's the idea of, and any medical student has done this, every psychological student has done this. Basically, as you're learning about these conditions, then you're like, oh yeah, I can see myself there. I can, of course, like, we can always kind of brainwash ourselves or believe that we are part of something. And it's natural for us humans to do that because we want connection. We want to be able to relate. And so that aspect of this book, I think, is pretty strong. And so we got to be able to separate ourselves off from that aspect to really critically look at the book and say, okay, what's the valuable information and how can we share that valuable information moving forward, and what aspects of it should we be using? I think the main overarching benefit of the book or thing that's consistent is the translation. Now, I've talked a lot about different books on this podcast and different books for different reasons. This book, I don't know whether I would say it's a complete self-help or a workbook. It's kind of in the middle in that it's parts of it are just a dictionary, and he does his best to kind of translate for the average person what is being meant when certain phrases are said by the average male or female. And he separates it, he creates a kind of a parable or a story of what Mars life must have been like for men and how we like to communicate, and then what Venus life must have been like for women and how they like to communicate. And the interesting thing I find about it is I feel like the whole book is a very 21st century way of looking at gender roles and how people like to be communicated to. And anybody who knows me directly knows this about me, and maybe this is where I falter in some area, but I tend to prefer really, really direct communication. And I don't think there's many parts in the book where it kind of says, oh, well, man, and I'm speaking about this from a man's perspective. I'm not really going to go too much into a woman until I talk about how my wife interpreted the book. But from a man's perspective, where it's like, oh, men don't like to be wrong. So if you ever make a man wrong, tell him sorry you upset him, and kind of like coddle him into still helping him have his self-esteem and his ego before, and then like you have to really, really be gentle about how you correct him or how you bring up his faults or any of that stuff. And I just think that's just as a general rule, and whether that I just don't know that that's an effective way to operate in life, honestly. And maybe the whole argument is whether we think it's effective or not, it's it is how we operate, and maybe there's an argument on that front, but I just haven't seen that be the case even long term. Like, getting direct feedback, in my experience, has been some of the most helpful feedback and loving feedback. Now, on the other side of that, the method of feedback is important. It is important that rather than coming from a position of blame or anger or upsetness, or guilt tripping or a gaslighting in the traditional sense of the word, it is important that all communications are communicated in love. Now, I came from a situation of being super direct and tactless in a lot of my childhood, and what I learned was I like that about myself. I like the way I communicate. The way I communicate's gotten me a lot of clients. It's gotten me a lot of business that I wouldn't have otherwise had, because my clients, they do appreciate that I don't sugarcoat things, that I don't try and like weasel my way into presenting something nicely. I say, hey, this is what it is. Deal with it, right? And I understand that not all clients like that, but my clients, they do. They appreciate that. And so I don't want to lose that in my personality now, because I know I can be forceful sometimes. I've learned ways to step around being so direct, and that is by prefacing everything I say with the intention and being clear about why I'm saying what I'm saying, right? And being willing, and then one, so that's the first step. Two is not taking offense myself, right? Not responding with offense when somebody else chooses to berate me or tell me I'm wrong or bad or whatever. I've learned, I've trained myself to say, that's an interesting perspective. That's an interesting thought. Let's talk about it. Maybe I'm wrong, right? I'm totally willing to be wrong. So I think that in this book, at least the impression I got a lot is that men don't like to be wrong. And I think that needs to change. Rather than trying to create an environment for a man where he doesn't have to ever be wrong, I think what would be more beneficial from my perspective is helping everybody in the situation learn to be okay with being wrong, right? That's a much better end goal, I think, is that rather than feed somebody's ego and kind of pat it and make sure that it never gets hurt, I don't think that's an effective long-term strategy, right? I think everything in life, the harder things that we confront in life, they help our muscles grow stronger. They help us become more mentally tough. They help us become more determined, more focused. And I think those are really, really good attributes. And I would hate to lose those just because I'm scared of being wrong. So if you're a man out there and that's your thing, you don't like being called out, you don't like being wrong, then I say, I honestly, deal with it, drop the act, and start, rather than being, and the way I deal with it, right? Because I don't like to be wrong. Like, I'm not saying I love being wrong, but the way I preemptively can stay right, okay, in my own little mind, I can stay right while being wrong, is I'm the first one to call it out, right? Going into any conversation with my wife or any conversation with a client or any conversation with anybody, I say, hey, look, I'm not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. It's very possible that I'm wrong. I'd be open to being wrong. I'd love to learn more, right? I'm programming myself to, one, learn to be humble and accept feedback. Two, be looking forward to hearing somebody else's perspective and learning. And then three, programming myself to act on it. So I'm preemptively doing that. So I don't have to wait for my wife or wait for my boss or my mentor or somebody else to call me out on being wrong. I'm openly admitting I know I'm not perfect, right? And every one of you, I believe inside of yourself, knows that you're not perfect. And you also know that you don't have all of the answers. And if any one of you listening to this want to deny that or contend that, please reach out to me. I'd love to bring you on the podcast and have a conversation about it. I know myself. I say a lot of stuff with absolute certainty, and at any point in time, my beliefs are fluid and are definitely able to be changed if I find a good reason to change them. So I'm not so ego-drivenly stuck in my opinions that they're fixed. Okay, and I would encourage you as a male or female to to take ego out of that, because literally you are not going to learn if you don't allow yourself to be challenged. And I think that's in this book, I think that's the one major overarching issue that I had with a lot of the book is it almost was padding each other's ego. And maybe that, I don't think that that's how he intended, John Gray, the gentleman who wrote it, I don't think that's how he intended it to come across. And I'm sure he was writing a book purely observationally, because that's what it sounds like, purely observationally. Hey, after all my years of counseling, this is what I've observed and how people feel. And that's great. I just don't think that that's something I would want to promote. If that's something I'm observing, just because I'm observing a bunch of homeless people living downtown and they sleep on the street, just because I'm observing that, I'm like, well, this must just be how homeless people operate. So if you're a homeless person, this is how you operate. No, if you're a homeless person, then I'm going to teach you how to become more productive. I'm going to teach you how to focus on what you want, not how to continue to live a life that's non-productive. And so that, on that note, just to preface it, that's kind of where I would put the correction in this book. Now, that being said, we're going to take that away and we're just going to focus on all the positive things on the book now. Just, I want to make sure that people understand what they're getting into and they get in it, because sometimes people will get in and they'll buy out to this philosophy because it sounds good, but then they actually are not allowing themselves to be challenged or grow. And I personally believe that's a dangerous position to be in, get to a point where you're not growing anymore. Okay. So we're going to shift to the positive. Now, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the things he counsels people to do, for whatever reason, again, this is the first time I've read this book, but I was already doing this in my relationships. I was already doing this for myself, just because it was the way I learned that is a good way to have a relationship. So I want to highlight those things because I've personally found them to be super effective. Okay. But one is have direct communication. And then if in the situation between you and your spouse, or you and whoever this relationship is with, if you and the female that you're, or male, right, are trying to communicate with, if you are struggling to communicate, then say, right now is not, I'm not in the right state of mind. Again, don't accuse them. Don't say, hey, sounds like you're getting upset. You need to go calm down and come back when you're ready to talk to me. That's not the approach. You take ownership. You say, hey, right now, I'm not really in a position where I feel like I can discuss this and stay level-headed. Let's revisit this in maybe an hour or two, or after I go collect my thoughts, right? So that is super, super important. It's the same thing in business when people ask me questions, and in the beginning of my business, because I didn't know any better, I was like, oh, I think this is blah, blah, blah. Look, if you don't know the answer, be honest with people, have some integrity and say, look, I don't know the answer. That's a great question. Let me go find out. And I use that phrase and that practice everywhere in my life. That's a principle that is applicable everywhere, whether it's at work or at home or in religion or any fitness. If you don't know the answer, don't pretend like you know the answer. Be honest with yourself, be honest with others, have some integrity, and just simply say, look, I don't know the answer. I will go do my best to find out the answer, and I'll report back and let you know what I find, and then actually report back. And so that is something that I've learned has been very helpful in my relationship with my wife and with other leaders. If I don't have the capacity at that point in time to respond adequately, then just stating, look, right now is not a good time to talk about it because I'm not prepared to respond, then at least you can remain in integrity, be honest, and then in the future follow that up and respond effectively. Now, he gives a process, a habit to build of how to process, how to respond, right? And he goes through like 5 different things. How do you feel? How are you angry? What do you need? What do you want? All these things. And he suggests writing a letter. Write a letter to the person who you're trying to have a conversation with, rather than digesting this information verbally, where you have all these nonverbal cues of tone and body language, that the speed of which is speaking, right? All those things, rather than digest it in that form, digest it in a form of reading it, right? So to help your spouse do that, then write it down and then give it to them. Now, the benefit there is it forces you to put your thoughts on paper. It also allows you to kind of visually see how your words are going to come across. Because a lot of us, we say stuff super selfishly, And I'm in this category as well. We say it super selfishly. We think that we're helping a situation. We think that we're communicating clearly. And then when we actually read what we read, then it's like, whoa, I didn't realize how absolutely selfish I was being with that statement. And so writing those things down helps you recognize, oh, actually, maybe I don't actually even feel this way. Helps you collect your thoughts, your feelings. And then from that, you're able to move towards a more loving state. And he mentions in there many times after writing these letters, you'll actually just go burn the letter. Like, oh, I didn't even want to say that. And you'll just go end up showing more love, appreciation, respect, honor to that person that you're having a conflict with. Okay. And for me, I found that absolutely. I think journaling is one of the absolute best life-saving practices to get in. Daily journaling of kind of your relationship, how things are going in business, how things are going with your children, how your thoughts are, what you're thinking about. If you're journaling this stuff, then it's pretty hard not to recognize the inconsistencies, or at least being able to say, okay, yes, I'm frustrated with this person about X, Y, and Z, but I'm also withholding or not doing X, Y, and Z, right? And so because of the journaling aspect and you getting it down on pieces of paper, that really assists in that process. And just that act alone, I think, has increased a lot of love and joy in my wife and I's relationship. And it's helped me operate, I think, fairly well in all of my business dealings and business relationships, because I'm daily journaling how I feel about these things. And I'm being able to see, hey, where am I off base? What things am I absolutely committed to that need to change? And because I'm able to make that connection and see it visually, and it helps me a lot. Another thing that he mentions in this book that I think was just interesting is he goes through the different types of how men or people from Mars like to process information, and how women generally like to process information. Now, in this situation, it seemed a lot to me that our roles were reversed in how we deal with information 80% of the time. Okay. So I'm somebody who immediately, as soon as something's going wrong, or I have a feeling or a thought, I love to discuss it. I just want to talk about it. I want to share with my wife, and I want to make sure we're on the same page and get to the end and get it resolved kind of immediately. My wife, on the other hand, Charlie likes to, when she's got something bothering her, rather than go and talk about it with a bunch of people and just vent about it, she generally likes to think about it for a day or two, and then come and say, hey, Sam, this is kind of where I'm at. This is the thing that are bugging me. This is how we can improve it. And think about it, solve it herself, and then come to the table with a solution. So we do, to a degree, have those roles are reversed. And that's more of a personality thing than a gender thing, in my opinion, at least in our relationship. Now, that being said, my wife does like to talk and vent more than I do, right? And I believe, in a large part, that's not because I like to just keep a hold of my problems. I personally don't have a ton to vent about. When I do have something to vent about, you betcha I'm venting about it, and I'm not looking for a solution. I'm just venting. I'm just allowing myself to be heard. I want to be heard, right? And Charlie, same time. So often I've asked, hey, is this a solution type of thing, or am I just listening? But also, I believe myself, and you could ask my wife, you can message her on Facebook and say, hey, Sam really what he says he is. But I honestly believe inside myself that I'm a pretty good listener when it comes to just needing to listen and let her be heard. And that's not always the case. Okay, I'm not perfect, nor do I believe anybody else is. But I think when she's feeling maybe boiling over, where she just needs to get a lot of stuff off her chest, I have no problem sitting there holding her and just letting her share her feelings. And that's something that I have learned over years that that's a good way to respond. So he points that out in the book as well. Hey, this is an effective way to respond. Women need this time. It's how they bond. It's how they see see and progress. And then men, his assessment of men is that men just want to go back in their hole, their cave, he calls it, and solve their problems, brood over things. And any questions about, hey, is that, how are we going to figure this out? Why'd you forget this? Why are you late? All these things that just further annoys a man, because in his perspective, i.e. the author's perspective, he's saying that makes a man feel like you don't trust him and trust his ability to get you or accomplish what needs to be done. And there may be a small degree of that. I don't think I would have ever said it that way before listening to this book. I do know that my immediate reaction, if I'm driving and Charlie says, hey, Sam, you need to get over, or you need to turn off your blinker, or whatever, right? I do know my immediate reaction is like, oh, no, I did it on purpose, right? More of a joke, but ultimately I'm just grateful that she's looking out for me and helping me navigate. And again, you can collaborate my story with her, but almost always I say, hey, thank you so much for letting me know. And it's not a facetious thank you. I'm not like being passive aggressive by saying, hey, thanks, I got this. I'm genuinely saying, hey, thank you for letting me know. Thanks for looking out and making sure I'm stopping and I don't run into the car in front of us, or I don't hit the car when I'm turning lanes, or I don't leave my blinker on and confuse the drivers in back of me, right? Very rarely am I offended that she's trying to help me drive or tell me the directions. Now, sometimes I think, well, yes, we're both looking at the same thing and I can see it. But most of the time, I think I'm pretty good at just being grateful for the help and the assistance. I know I'm absent-minded as a person. I'm often wrong, and I operate my life from that perspective because it helps me learn more. And that kind of goes back to the beginning of this whole podcast. How are you so egotistical that you don't like being wrong? Or are you preemptively saying, look, I know I'm often wrong. Please come and correct me. Please give me feedback. I love the feedback. I love the opportunity to improve and progress and become more. And that's how I operate life. I want to become better. That's the whole purpose of me being on this planet, as far as I'm concerned. And so how can I do that if nobody's willing to correct me? Nobody's willing to give me honest, critical feedback, immediate feedback, right? If you give me feedback and you're like, hey, I really don't like it when you say things that are rude. I'm like, okay, like be more specific so I know what you don't like, right? And I'm not out of a way to second guess or say, look, I'm not really being that rude. No, I'm well aware that I have a personality that not everybody gets along with, but I'm asking for specifics because if I can get a specific and I can identify, hey, why did I say what I said and what was my intention, then I can say, okay, well, this was my intention in saying that. What would be a better way for me to get across my intention? Because my intention, I don't think I'm going to change, but the method, I'm totally willing to change the method of communication if a new method is better. And so at that point in time, then we can have a discussion about, okay, this is my intention. How can we better communicate? And I love that. I love having those conversations with either business mentors, coaches, clients, spouses, children, any of those types of conversations. I love the opportunity to improve. So that's something I would think about is how can you be more accepting of correction? And I think that goes both ways, men and women. Women, they don't like being corrected. I mean, there's this huge wise myth, and I say myth, it's not really a myth, unfortunately, it's just is what it is. But like if your wife comes down in a dress and it doesn't look good on her, it's okay to lie and say it does. Look, I don't know like how you justify your integrity inside of yourself, but for me, it's not okay to lie. It's okay to ask a question and say, do you want my honest opinion or do you just want to feel good right now, right? Because at that point, then I know exactly what she's expecting. And then I can say, well, this is, it looks, if you feel like it looks good, then I'm happy with it, right? Because then I'm basing whether I'm happy with it off of whether she feels happy about it rather than whether I think it looks good. Because there's two different questions. Are you happy with me wearing this, or do you think this looks good? And sometimes there's things I don't think look good, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, yes, I think it looks good if it doesn't look good. On the other token, I'll tell anybody male, female, black, white, brown, yellow, blue, Smurf, dog, I don't care who it is, right? If I think it looks good, then I have no problem being lavish and saying, look, I think I love that shirt. I love those earrings. I love your makeup today. I love your pants, right? But I'm not going to sugarcoat something. I'm not going to just lie to somebody because I think it will make them feel better. Like that's the ultimate insult, saying, I don't think you're mentally tough enough or want honesty enough for me to give you honest feedback. So instead, I'm going to lie to you because I think that you want me to lie to you. Like no spouse that I know of really in the whole long term really wants to be living with a spouse they can't trust, right? So I don't think dishonesty is ever the way to go. And that's going definitely against conventional opinions or thoughts or what you're going to hear from most people. And that's okay. I don't mind being the voice that stands out. But I do think that at some point we as individuals, we need to get to the point where we're okay getting honest feedback, especially if you ask a question. Be prepared for some honest feedback. At least if you're dealing with Samuel Knickerbocker, that's what you're going to get. You're not going to get some frillies or some feel-goods or some lies. Look, if I don't think something looks good, I probably will decline to answer the question or change the subject, but I'm not going to straight up tell you something looks good if it doesn't look good. And I apply that principle across the board in my life, and it helps me not have to wonder about what I said. If I tell my wife, oh yeah, looks great, just because she feels good about herself, but I really am not attracted to it, okay? And then she now interpreted that I actually liked it. Well, now she's going to wear more and more of those types of clothes that I don't actually think are attractive. Where does that leave our relationship? Well, now I'm starting to look at other people that I think are more attractive. And I'm not saying like that's I'm saying that is a more natural human way of being. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do and that every man should kind of play that card. I'm not saying that. I just think people are attracted to what they are attracted to, and telling somebody that you love that you're attracted to something that you're not attracted to is not serving you, and it's not serving them. And this should be, in my opinion, and I'm going to use the should word, your objective especially in a marriage, should be to please to give 110, 150%, 200% into the marriage, which means you should be really striving to make your partner happy. And if that was your wife's objective, was really to make you happy, okay, and your objective was really to make her happy, and I'm not saying lose yourself and forget your own wants and needs, but if that's your objective and you think you're making your spouse happy because they're lying to you, how can that be at all beneficial? Be honest with yourself. How can that be beneficial? I just don't think it can be. So, anyways, this book was really interesting. It's quite a long one, but I would suggest everybody go read it because if nothing else, it gives you a really good language pattern. Listen to it with your spouse. Don't just listen to it alone and they're gonna be like, what the heck's going on? Listen to it with your spouse and say, okay, how can we communicate better? Where do you see yourself in this specific conversation situation? Where do you see yourself here? Where do you see yourself here? And be able to just open up more communication amongst yourselves and learn how to communicate better. There's lots of books out there. This is one of them. And I really enjoyed it. There were times I found myself laughing like, oh, I totally identify with that. Oh, that really does frustrate me, right? There were times that it was spot on, and then there was other times that I felt like it missed the mark completely for me, okay? And so that's why I want to recall, we're going all the way back to the beginning. He does put in his disclaimer at the beginning of the book that basically says these are large generalities. I know they're not specific. You may not relate with everything that's being said. And so just remember that as you read the book. It's a great read. I'm super excited for Friday though, because Friday we're going to be talking to Stan Padgett. He's a marriage therapist, coach, essentially. He helps people increase their love, and his goal is to have your marriage be 1,000 out of 1,000 scorecard. So how to do that, I'm going to let him kind of give you the quiz during the podcast. So you're going to want to have a pen and paper when it comes up, be writing down your answers. Most people are somewhere in between 100 and 500 to get up into that 1,000 number, it's got to have some good numbers there. And so I'm excited for you to get access to that and start analyzing how good is your relationship, how much effort, how much joy are you actually putting into your relationship. And that might, just by making a few small changes in your relationship, you might be able to really 10x that relationship, max it out, and make sure that you're really, really going for what you want, and you're building ultimately a marriage of legacy, right? A marriage that's going to last, and that people are going to be looking up to and saying, wow, how can I achieve that? And if you are so thrilled to be waking up next to your spouse every morning that you're wondering, how can I achieve that? That's awesome. I mean, a few nights ago, my wife chose to sleep with my son, and I got home late from work. It was like 11:30 when I got home. So she was in the other room sleeping with our 7-month-old, and I had to sleep by myself. And sure, there's a lot of people thinking, oh, that sounds great. Even my wife, she loves sleeping by herself. For me, I get worse sleep sleeping by myself than I do with even my kid who wakes up all the time, right? I really, really like being close to another body when I'm sleeping. And so, yeah, we discussed it the morning after, and we said, look, no more. If that ever happens, you can sleep by yourself. I'll sleep with the baby. I'll wake you up in the middle, and you can go get some better sleep, because I just don't sleep well alone. I don't enjoy it. I'm not relaxed. I'm worried when I wake up. So there you go. Fear of being alone. Sam has it for sure. But just think about, how can you create a relationship that you're excited to see each other every morning. It's the highlight of your day, waking up, seeing each other smiling and cuddling, and then throughout the day doing little acts of service and love, and really fostering a relationship to where all you want is to be with your spouse. That's kind of a goal for me, to be able to keep that relationship alive, sexy, vibrant, and exciting. So with that being said, super excited for Friday with Sam Paget, and we will catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.